Most entrepreneurs know that they should tell stories online and integrate storytelling into their content. It is not a secret that storytelling content is absolutely on the rise, and digital storytelling is something we should all be focused on. However, the idea of telling stories is one thing, telling those stories is a completely different ballgame. A lot of entrepreneurs will have tons of story ideas, but they never get to the implementation. Today, I'm going to break down a simple three-part framework. It's the three M's. And I'm going to break down each piece of this structure so you can take your stories and you can easily plug them into this template and start sharing your stories online. Because you have a story to share and I want to help you share it with as many people as possible. And like everything here at Brand Mary and my genuine obsession with storytelling, I know you're also a business owner. And so these aren't just fun stories that we're sharing online. These are stories we want and need to convert. And so we are going to talk about in today's video the 3M framework with examples, how you can use this template, and specifically how you can use it to make money online. Hey there, I'm Michelle Knight, and I have been teaching entrepreneurs how to tell stories online for 9 years with my company, Brand Mary. I am so excited that you are joining me for another video. And if this is your first time here, welcome. Be sure to subscribe and just, give it a thumbs up while you're down there. I want to make sure you don't miss any future videos, especially storytelling related, because if you happen to stumble upon this one, I got to tell you, I have a plethora of content waiting for you to just dive into. In fact, last week, I shared a video on how to create a story bank in just 30 minutes. I took you full on behind the scenes in this video with my own story bank, how to set it up, how to organize it, all the cute little things that I use to make my life so much easier and actually telling those stories. Because you've got a story, but if it's just sitting there, it's not doing anything. And today we're going to take it a step further with this three-part framework. Over the years, I have really refined a specific framework called the 3Ms. The 3Ms is the moment, the meaning, and the message. It's super simple, but it is incredibly powerful. This is the framework I use for my own content and that I teach my clients so they can share their stories online, create an impact, attract their ideal customers, and create revenue, because you need that in order to run a business. So let's kick it off with the very first part one, the moment. Every great story starts with a specific moment. A lot of entrepreneurs are trying to fit too much into one piece of content. The way great storytelling works, especially digital storytelling, is to focus on the micro moments, because one of the things that storytelling does that is so impactful on our audience is that it paints a very vivid picture. If you're trying to cover too much in a story, you miss out on the details. So the first thing that you need to do when you are creating a digital storytelling piece, you need to identify a very specific moment. When you're setting up this moment, I want you to think, what was happening right then? Where were you? Who were you with? What specific details could you include that could make your audience feel as if they were there with you? As with all of these parts, I'm going to give you very clear examples because I love examples. And so I'm going to give them to you too, so you can actually see this in action. A bad example, and one that is way too vague and doesn't paint a picture, is when I started my business, I was working a 9 to 5. Again, it just kind of falls flat. There's so much opportunity here. So if I were writing this, I would say, I remember sitting in my car outside my 9 to 5, literally crying in my coffee because I couldn't imagine doing this for another 30 years. It's vivid, it's emotional, and it is specific. You can imagine me sitting in the car. As I like to say with the moment piece, you can see it and you can feel. Now remember, the moment, the very beginning, is meant to hook your audience. So the more descriptive and the more vivid you can be, that's exactly what you're going to do. And this is the type of hook that I love because it doesn't feel sleazy. It doesn't feel like clickbait. It feels genuine, but it's still getting me to lock in and go, tell me more. The second part of your framework is going to be the meaning. Now, this is the body. This is the heart of the content. This is where you're going to expand and elaborate on the story. You have now brought them in with the moment, and now you are going to paint that picture. It's not just explaining what happened, though. It's also starting to explain why it matters, why you're telling this story in the first place. Because great storytelling for business owners is not just about sharing a story. because you're sharing a story. It's sharing a story that is going to resonate with your specific audience. Because remember, at the end of the day, we want them to take action on something. Doesn't always have to be buy this. It could be subscribe, follow me, comment below, send me a DM. You're welcome here. Motivation, whatever the CTA is that you ultimately choose. But we want them to take action. And so the meaning needs to deeply connect to your ideal customer. So ask yourself, why does this story matter to them? What did it teach me? What are the lessons that I learned about myself, about my business, about my audience, about my framework? And what do I want my audience to walk away with? A bad example of this is that's very surface level would be, I realized I didn't like my job. It's flat, there's no depth, there's no motion, there's no expansion. It's like the story began and then it just ended. But a good example, one that is emotional, one that expands, one that really speaks directly to your ideal customer that's what I realized. I had been building a life based on someone else's version of success. I followed the right path. I went to school. I got a job. I climbed the ladder, but none of it ever felt right. I was chasing milestones and checking boxes that didn't even align with who I was. Now that's the part of the story that your audience connects with. When you start to pull at the emotional heartstrings, as I like to say, you start to integrate that emotional branding, it starts to allow them to make that connection. They might not have been in this exact same moment, but they felt those things in some capacity. And part 3 is where we wrap it all up in the message. This is what you want your audience to walk away with. This is what seamlessly integrates into the CTA. This is where you bring it all home, in a sense. Without the message, your story is entertainment. But with the message, you can dial up the connections and the conversions, which, as I've said multiple times, is really what we want when we are telling stories as a business owner. A bad example would be, so I decided to start my business. Like, this story literally sucks. So bad. Again, it ends the story. It's so abrupt. It doesn't offer any sort of reflection. It didn't tie into a lesson. It didn't even give my audience anything to do. But a good example would be, and if you're stuck in a cycle of chasing goals and strategies and meeting expectations that don't align with you, it's okay to stop and redefine what success means to you. Because when you build your business from a place of alignment, that's when things finally start to click. Listening to that voice that I had sitting in my car led me to where I am today. Over 2 million in cash generated, serving thousands of entrepreneurs with my story and with my message, all because I was courageous enough to redefine success. Now you can see at the end, the story really is about your audience stepping in to that place. It is about your audience. You're giving them permission to stop, to redefine, to do things their way. Now, that in and of itself could stand alone if your goal was engagement, to pull at the heartstrings. But with all great businesses, we want to tie in a CTA there as well. So you could always tie the lesson to your expertise. You can always tie the lesson to a specific offer that you have. For this example, I could say, now I help entrepreneurs make the leap into starting their own business. I give them a step-by-step process to go from working a 9 to 5 to starting their own online business, redefining success, and creating a life that is in alignment. Comment roadmap for details. Like something like that would be very simple, but it was a story that led to the action that I wanted them to take. In my video last week, I talked about how storytelling is one of the easiest ways to sell without it feeling pushy or gross, and sometimes your audience can't even tell. Now, the example that I gave you is a great example for something like social media, for a short reel or a talking head video. But this type of framework doesn't just work on social media. It works great with long form content as well. So I'm going to give you 2 examples, one for a podcast and one for a video training like a YouTube, where you can follow this exact same framework and integrate storytelling into that content. So let's say you have a topic, okay? So like with a lot of these types of content, you might not be starting with a story like you would be for social media. You're going to have a specific topic. Maybe it's something educational or teaching that you are going to be sharing in one of these instances. And what you want to do is you want to then take that content and integrate storytelling. So it has more heart, it has more emotion. This is one of the reasons last week I talked about that dang story bank and the importance of adding in these specific tags. So if you are going in that way, you have your content and you want to go in and find a story that connects to that content, It's going to be so easy to do with this bank. So just like the framework we followed, let's use the podcast as an example. You would open with a very specific moment, a quick personal story to draw a listener in. Then you would expand on the message. You would talk more about why this matters. You would relate it to the topic that you were sharing on that podcast, and then you would tie it up with the message. What can they take away or apply to their own journey? For example, let's say I'm doing a podcast episode on burnout. I'm a life coach, okay? And I could begin with a very specific moment I felt burnt out. In the next section, I could connect with the reality that most entrepreneurs burn out because they are trying to achieve unsustainable growth. And then I could leave them with mindset shifts so they no longer feel like they have to chase outside expectations. And that would be where I would dive into the content itself. So beginning with the 3 M's is a great way to set up more educational or training types of. You could also use this if you have an interview with someone who is coming on your podcast. You could share a story about when you first met them, or maybe elaborate a little bit more on the topic and your own experience and why you wanted to have them on your podcast to talk about this specific topic. Another example you could do would be a training video. I love evergreen content here, so we're going to use this as an example. Let's say I am creating a video all about evergreen content. I have a ton of those videos on my channel, actually, where I am teaching you how to use these platforms like YouTube, where you can reach people without having to post every single day. So that would be the idea and the main point of this training video. So I would set it up. I would start teaching these different things, but let's say halfway through the video, I wanted to check in with my audience. I wanted to connect with them a little bit more and go deeper. I could then add in a very simple 2 to 3 sentences with the 3M framework. It could go a little bit something like this. I remember being so stressed every single morning trying to figure out what I was going to post every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. And the worst part was that nobody really ever saw it. That's when I realized that more content wasn't the answer. The reality is that simplicity scales. And if I could create really great content rather than a bunch of mediocre content, I would be able to grow my business faster. That's why I prioritize evergreen content today. And then I could go into some of my favorite platforms. So as you can see, you can follow this formula and use it to create a longer type of story. Still micro, okay? It's still a shorter, let's say, social media post or an Instagram story, literally a story. Or you can also use it in like 2 to 3 sentences to just integrate into your content so that it actually sticks with your audience. Because we know the more stories that we share, the more relatable our content is, and actually the more memorable our content is as well. So just to recap your very simple framework today, you want to start off with the moment, a very specific moment that you are going to be sharing your story about. It allows you to paint a vivid picture, my friend. The second thing you want to do is share the meaning. This is where you elaborate, you tell more of the story, you paint an even more vivid picture. You really invite your audience in and you start to tie in the lesson, and you wrap it up with the message. What do you want them to walk away with? What do you want them to remember? And don't forget that CTA, because as with all things, you really want to make sure that your content converts. Now you have it. You have a very simple 3-part framework. Post a note, put it in front of your face on your computer, save it in your phone. So every time you go to write it, you can just start following this process. Bonus tip, if you are someone who does like AI, and I do love using AI as like an editor or virtual assistant, you could go into AI and you could say, Michelle Knight from Brand Mary is teaching me this 3-part framework for telling my stories. Give it the 3-part framework. Say, I want to tell a story about this. Just bleh. Word vomit all up in the AI, all about the different details, and ask it to create a cohesive post for you. It's your original words, it's following a proven framework, and it's making it easier for you to get your voice out into the world. If that's what it takes to get you started, then use it to get you started. Don't forget that I have an entire video on how to come up with storytelling ideas and actually how to organize those. I'm giving you prompts and questions so you can fill out your story bank in just 30 minutes. And I've gone a step further to make your life that much easier. I've put together over 2,900 storytelling prompts that I've used in my own business and shared with my clients so that you can literally take the guesswork out of what to share online. You can go ahead and get that for just $27, and I put the details below for you to check it out. I will be back with another video next week. It's probably going to be about storytelling. So if that is the type of content that you love, I'll see you then.